My name is Klemens. I am an indie developer from Austria, and I've been doing indie apps for quite a while now. It's been over 11 years, and over those years I released many apps, but I always built those apps while I was employed with another company until last year, when I finally made the jump to go full indie to focus on a single project. And the name of the project is Art of Fauna. And as you just heard in the lovely introduction, doing this step was one of the best decisions in my life, because Art of Fauna ended up winning the Apple Design Award last year in inclusivity, and then also the App Store Award in cultural impact. And thank you. And while you might think that winning either of those two awards was my favorite moment in my professional career, my actual favorite moment was something smaller, something much more personal, and that also happened last year, and I want to start my presentation by sharing this moment with you. So it happened here at Apple Park last year during WWDC. I was sitting in the SwiftUI lab talking to an engineer when suddenly somebody tapped on my shoulder. And I turned around, looked in their face, didn't recognize them, but they just pulled out their phone and showed the phone to me. And the phone read, "Hey, are you Klemens?" I was a little bit confused, but I looked in their eyes, I nodded. They turned away again, typed something in the phone, and then the phone read, "Thank you so much for everything you do in accessibility. Me and my team at Apple appreciate how much you care." They pulled out this little accessibility pin, gave it to me, looked me in the eyes, and then just walked away. And while this doesn't feel like it's much, or doesn't seem like it's a huge thing, I was just sitting there completely stunned, because it was a tiny moment of kindness, but it really meant the world to me. And the person was right. I do care. I care a lot about my apps. I care a lot about making beautiful designs, wonderful UX, just playful little things. But I also care about doing stupid little things in my app that have absolutely no functional meaning, like this little card in Pocket Shelf that you can sign however you want. Doesn't matter, doesn't have any functional meaning, but it's just fun. But I also care about my users, all of my users, no matter which assistive technology they are using. So I wanted to take this presentation and talk a little bit more about caring and how it elevated Art of Fauna to the success that it has become. If you have never heard about Art of Fauna, let me give you a very quick introduction. It's a very simple jigsaw-like puzzle game. So you have a beautiful image, it's split into pieces, and you have to piece together this puzzle again. And as you can hear, there are some nature sounds in the background and some other beautiful sound designs. And as soon as you're finished with a puzzle, you get a little information about the animal with a little text on the background before you can move to the next puzzle. This starts out very, very easy, gets a little bit harder, and can go very hard if you're into these kind of puzzles. But I'm often asked how I'm making the art for Art of Fauna, and the truth is that I'm not drawing it myself, because if I would draw it, it would look more like this. But if I would, I'm also not using AI, so it also doesn't look like this. All the art in Art of Fauna is actually from real physical books from the 18th and 19th century. They were scanned in by an organization called the Biodiversity Heritage Library and made available online for free. But all those books were initially made for scientific studies, so the art of Art of Fauna is very beautiful and very scientifically accurate. But since I got all of those images for free, I wanted to do something in return. So a portion of every purchase in Art of Fauna supports wildlife conservation. And to this date, over 20,000 euros were collected for wildlife conservation with Art of Fauna. And that's Art of Fauna in a gist. But if you know my work, then you know something is missing, and that is accessibility. And I care a lot about accessibility, so much that Apple made an interview with me last year during Global Accessibility Awareness Day, where I talk about how I built my apps. And there, in this interview, I start with how I built my apps. And it's basically, if I have an idea, I always try to check, is the idea fun? Is it memorable? Is it something that I really enjoy? But then I also always check if I can make it accessible. And only if I can answer both of those questions with yes, then I'm going to continue with the project or with the idea. But if one of those is a no, then I will just scrap the idea and move to the next one. And that is actually what happened with Art of Fauna in the beginning. So Art of Fauna started out with something like this, a very, very simple puzzle, split into rows. That was already fun for me. That was something I really enjoyed. But I couldn't see how I can make this accessible to a blind person. Like, how do you make a visual puzzle game like this accessible to somebody who can't see or has some visual impairment? So at this point of time, after I had the prototype, I had to put Art of Fauna on hold because I didn't have a solution. Until I encountered one of these. You sometimes see those signs in parks or in nature reservoirs where you see an animal and the image of the animal and then a little text about the animal. And seeing this made click in my head and gave me the solution to my accessibility problem. And the solution is actually shown here. It's behind that little button. Because if you click the button, the gameplay changes from an image-based puzzler to a text-based puzzler, which has the huge opportunity or the huge benefit that if you're blind, you can use voiceover to let you read out the different chunks of the text and therefore solve the puzzle on the text side. But this was meant as an accessibility feature, but meant so much more for the game itself, because it now had an educational spin to it that made it much more interesting to all users. And accessibility is baked into Art of Fauna very deeply. This is actually the very first screen that you're ever going to see in Art of Fauna, which is an accessibility screen that allows you to set up your accessibility settings before you ever touch the app. And that has multiple benefits of showing an accessibility screen on the very first thing of your app. It shows to the user that you care about accessibility and that you care about users, but it also makes your onboarding more accessible. Because often I see apps that have accessibility settings somewhere deep in their settings, but the user has to go through the whole onboarding without having access to those accessibility settings, which makes the onboarding less pleasant and less accessible to the user. Having them there now makes the onboarding more pleasant and maybe even possible to the user. But also, it makes features more discoverable to users who might not think that they need accessibility settings in the first place. And a good example for that are the phobia settings in Art of Fauna. So, as I said before, the drawings are scientifically accurate, and there are people who are dead scared of spiders or insects or snakes. So the phobia settings allow you to turn off those animals, and those puzzles are automatically skipped. And if you then click on one of the puzzles, you get a content warning before it's shown to you. And while this is very important for users, the users who need those accessibility settings would probably never look into the settings and into the accessibility settings to even search for them. But having them on the very first screen made it visible to the user and led to beautiful reviews like this one. I have a bunch of reviews like this one on the App Store where they explicitly shout out the accessibility settings or the phobia settings. So to sum all of this up, don't underestimate the power of accessibility. It's not only a thing that makes the app more pleasant to a small portion of your users, it makes it better for everybody. And I was just showing you a review of Art of Fauna. Art of Fauna has now a bunch of reviews. It stands at over 17,000 ratings on the App Store and still has an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars. And I get the question a lot from other indie developers of how I'm able to maintain such a high score with those ratings. And there are multiple answers to this question. The first one is that I chose the point where I show my little rating dialogue very well. It's at this puzzle, the first little bit more difficult puzzle, and if the user overcome that little bit more difficult puzzle, they feel very good about themselves and are very likely to give me a high score. But this is the obvious one. I also try to reply to mails quickly and with care. And that means that if somebody, especially if somebody is angry, if you show them that you're a real human that cares about their problems, that cares about fixing their issue, then it can really de-escalate a very critical situation very easily and turn an angry user to one of the kindest users that you can have. And then I try to make my mail support easy and pleasant to the user. And what I mean with that is that there are certain situations in the app when they run into an issue, for example, or like here in the app icon screen, where you have a bunch of app icons in the app that you can choose from, but maybe your favorite animal is not in there. Then at the bottom, I have a little button where you can click Request App Icon, and that immediately sends me an email, and I can really quickly act on that. So in situations where the user is kind of frustrated, I always show a dialogue that they can easily send me a support email. And for app icons specifically, it's kind of easy for me to do them because I just need to search for one of the beautiful images. And then I can release the app icon and write an email back to them and include something like, PS, if you like Art of Fauna, it would be awesome to leave a review on the App Store. I also always explain that this helps a lot when getting noticed by other people, or that this helps me with my App Store search rankings, so that the user is very, really gets the idea that it's important for me and my business that they should leave a review. And they just had a very good support interaction with me, so they're very likely to give me a very good review. In fact, like last week, I wrote an email like this and immediately got something like this back. I submitted my my review, 5 stars, of course, as soon as I received your email. But this was about getting more ratings. What about maintaining a high review score? And the main thing I'm doing there is to honestly reply to App Store reviews. So like everybody else, I'm getting a lot of reviews like these, which are 1-star reviews where people complain about the price or about the app not being totally free. And every time I get a review like this, I reply with a bunch of things. First, I show that I'm a caring human. I understand that not everybody can or wants to afford a full version of the app, and that is okay. But I also explain to them why the app costs money. I'm a human, I have to pay my bills somehow, so I have to ask for money. I'm also explaining why I'm not doing advertisement in the app, because that often leads to the selling of the user's data, and that's against the ethics of the app. And then finally, I explain what the damage a 1-star review does. That it decreases my search rankings and therefore has an immediate impact on my business and me, an effect of me being able to stay indie. And if I reply with these things to 1-star reviews, 50% of my 1-star reviews either disappear, so people delete them. I even often get emails from those people who say that they are sorry that they wrote a review like this in the first place, or they turn into 5-star reviews. So if you deal with customer support, be honest and be human. So I'm an indie developer, and I'm also mentioning this always in my responses to support and everywhere, basically. And I use this, this being indie as an advantage where I can. So for example, on my paywall, instead of like doing patterns where I trap people in my paywall or something like that, I show my face and show the people that I'm an indie developer. And also in all of my social media marketing, I'm always mentioning that I'm an indie developer and I show my face there. And I could go into this in much more detail, but time is running out, so I go to the next point, which is that being indie is not always easy and always as nice as it looks from the outside. There's a wonderful article on this written by Daniela about you often feeling alone and feeling overwhelmed. And for me, to fight those kind of things, I do a bunch of different things. First of all, I go to events like this one, where I meet lovely people and get inspired by them. Last year, I was in over 8 different conferences and just learned a ton of things from all of the other indies, and that helped me fight my loneliness. But I also play around with a lot of different apps and get very inspired by them. And I give a lot of feedback to those apps. So much that a friend of mine recently suggested that this could be used as a method to drive a competitor insane. Just let me use their app and they will eventually give up because I just will end up spamming them with feedback. And when giving so much feedback, I also get so much feedback from people. Some of my best ideas in Art of Fauna and Art of Flora are actually from other people. So for example, this Art of Flora has a little map that kind of unfolds like a physical map and feels like a physical map, but it's still a full map kit view. And that's a very nice feature in the app. But the idea for the feature was done by Sophia, not by me. And most of the code was done by Seb, which is another friend, and not done by me. And then over the year, I also often tweet about other indie apps. I give, not because I want anything in return, just because I'm very excited about those indie apps and I want to spread the word about those beautiful projects. But when the launch of Art of Fauna came, many of the people actually returned the favor and wrote some of the nicest things about the app when it launched. And that didn't only help me get more users to Art of Fauna, most importantly, it gave me a motivational boost to keep working on the app. So message here being that you should care about others and they will end up caring about you. And lastly, I need to talk about a different topic, which is that I had to learn about caring about myself. Because I told you in the beginning that I quit my day job to finish Art of Fauna or to release Art of Fauna, but that is only half of the story. I always worked on my indie apps while I was employed, so I worked late at night, I worked on weekends, and that led me to neglect my friends and my family and even caused some personal health issues. So going indie was also a step of learning to care about myself. And I discovered that I actually get my best ideas when I take breaks. So right now, I always try to play a lot of video games. When I'm on a conference like this, I take a few more days to explore the city and get inspired by the city. And as you heard in the introduction, I also drink a lot of coffee. And some of the recent ideas or recent things that happened in Art of Fauna through this caring about myself was the sound design in Art of Fauna was completely inspired by the return of Opera Dinn, which is a video game that has absolutely nothing to do with a cozy puzzle game, but it inspired me to do that. And the art gallery in Art of Flora was directly inspired by a museum visit. So we talked a lot about caring today, and I want to leave you with one final statement. That is, if you care a bit more, you might not only find success, but also be happy doing so. And with that, I say thank you very much for listening. I have a bunch of stickers with me and pins like this. So if you want stickers or pins, just approach me. And that's it.